Well, good morning and welcome to our first City Talk. And I want to thank everyone for joining us here today with our first guest speaker. Is we have Chief Ruiz here with us with the Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department. You know, my opportunities is to really work well with my council colleagues. And I got to acknowledge the council that's here today. I know we have Vice Mayor Corey Woods with us today. We have Councilmember Lauren Kuby, we have Councilmember David Shapira, and Councilmember Colby Granville. Let's give them a round of applause and thank you for coming. Now, we will host events like this throughout the year, in the upcoming year. This is an opportunity where we're going to re-engage our citizens with certain topics throughout the year of what could be of interest to you. So it's an opportunity for us to really reach out and hear from our residents and hear about what's happening here in the great city of Tempe. With that being said, today, as I mentioned, we like to discuss a lot of the top jobs that we have in the city, and that's the fire chief, the chief of the Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department. And we want him to explain to all of you how we're keeping all of you safe in and throughout our city. And in 2014 alone, the Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department responded to over 22,720 calls in 1 year. And less than 10% of those calls were fire-related. And it just shows you how important the evolving, changing that's happening with our public safety and what's all involved with that. And there's a lot of changes in the fire service industry, and I'd like to introduce to you Chief Greg Reese here to discuss with you. So thank you, Chief, for coming.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and why you became a firefighter?
Yeah, sure. Greg Reese. Why I became a firefighter, I think the answer you're going to get from most is it's to help others, make a difference. And I'm right in line with that answer. It really does. I don't think there's a greater calling, and most firefighters that you talk to or people who would like to do this for a living have been exposed to it somehow, whether it's family or through the college system or just through a ride-along like me. And once you go out and you're able to make a difference at that level, you're hooked. It's truly a calling, and once you know that's your calling, you'll do anything you can you'll stand in lines with 3,000 people and go for a quest. The quest is the same, to be able to do this for a living.
Oh, good. And I know a lot has changed over the years. When you first became a cadet in the fire academy, could you tell us what's different between when you went through the fire academy and versus the new recruits that come through?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest difference, as we've had this discussion before, and that is the academy length is still the same. So you got to ask yourself what's happening. How come it hasn't gotten shorter or longer? It's the content that's changed. It's the way we view fire behavior and the way we're training the new recruits on the way fire develops and the changes that occur. The equipment changes, both from the suppression standpoint, from the special operations standpoint, and more importantly, the EMS side of it. I mean, when you look around the valley, when I first started there were specialty trucks that had paramedics on them. Now every fire truck has a paramedic on it. So I'd see some of the greatest changes are in the EMS that they're learning. You
didn't have to, walk barefoot through 110-degree weather.
No, I'm not going to go there.
It was a lot tougher back then when I went through the academy versus today.
Yeah.
So, what advice could you give a Tempean, a young Tempean, or anyone in the valley that's really thinking of going into the industry for the public safety in terms of Tempe Fire Medical Rescue?
I think if you're thinking about going into the industry, some of the things that have changed, when I first took the test, and it still is a requirement, and that's GED and your EMT, your emergency medical technician, but nowadays we have people from all walks of life. It's a really competitive market. I would say that education is really a big piece of the puzzle. What was once one of those jobs that many construction type industry people, because it's truly a hands-on job,
right,
is becoming more and more one in which we have people that are coming to us with master's degrees. And then again, working for the city sees the value in that, and through tuition reimbursement, we have people that once they get here continue to get their education. I would say get your education and truly spend some time at the station figuring out what it is we do for a living. As you alluded to, 10% is fires, and if you're coming into this business to fight fire every single day, that's not what we do. We do so many different other things, extremely important things, and add value to the community by providing those services, a lot of services that nobody else provides.
Well, you mentioned that 10% of those calls were just fire, but if you think about it, of the 23,000 calls, that's over 2,200 to 2,300 fires that we had last year, which is, to us, that's a lot. And I know you mentioned earlier that we wish we had zero.
Sure. A big piece of what we do is prevention. We prevent bad things from happening, and that's why we have a public education and fire prevention section within the department. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the number 23,000 or 23,000 calls, 10% are response to fire type events, whether it's an alarm sounding all the way up to this morning, as you and I discussed coming in, we had a large fire in our neighboring Guadalupe, which we respond into. Those are tragic events, and so you don't want to see them ever happen. Once you've been to a fire and you see the loss and the damage, anything you can do to prevent that from happening to somebody.
Well, you know, speaking of how we responded to a call outside of our borders, that's so important. And one of the issues that, you know, we talked about how the industry is completely changing and our response times are critical. But what's really, really important is the fact that we have what we call automatic aid, which means that there are no borders when it comes to public safety within the Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department. And what I mean by that is, if we could not do what we do without the partners and the relationships that we have with other cities that surround us. So automatic aid is so vital. It saves lives, and it really shows the region partnership that we have with the other cities that surround us, which is really fantastic. And Chief, if you could explain what automatic aid is and how we work well with, you know, our regional partners, because just because there's a fire in you know, Southwest Chandler or Northwest Chandler doesn't mean that we wouldn't respond, because it's something that we really work well together with all our neighboring cities.
Yes, sir. Every opportunity I get to, when I go out and speak at any kind of the community events, that's one of the questions. How come I had Chandler or Mesa fire apparatus in my neighborhood the other day? It's because of the Automatic Aid Consortium. We belong to a 26 city, which started out in the early 80s, as you and I were discussing yesterday. Where did it get its roots? It was in the early 80s. We were one of the 3 agencies that the couple chiefs that were visionary and thought, why do we have boundaries? Tempe, Glendale, and Phoenix. Why do we have boundaries? Why are we not taking advantage of each other's resources? And from the early 80s to where we are now, we have 26 cities that through a GPS system have no boundaries. So you have somebody always coming, and as the events get larger, the resources continue to come, and it also creates an environment where we as a city don't have to put specific resources in service because we belong to a system that resource is coming from somewhere else. Obviously, our concern is always response time of that resource and whether we need it or not, but there are a lot of resources just not utilized a lot, like a crane. Phoenix has a crane that is specifically designed for our technical rescue team, and they train with it. There's not a need for us to own a crane, but we do have it as a resource in the consortium. Yeah, so it's a great system. When I travel around, that's usually what people ask, what is it like to be a part of this system? It's as a consumer, it's fabulous to know that in my neighborhood, if the fire truck is out, that I have, whether it's in the Tempe unit or another unit that isn't far from my house, and going to provide that service.
Right, and I think that's good for our residents to understand what automatic aid means, because that means there are no boundaries, as you've mentioned, but more importantly, with the GPS system, they automatically locate. So when a call comes into a 911 system, they search for the closest truck available to where that caller is. And I think and it really does help with response times. And I think, you know, we save lives with that. So I think that's something that I think our residents and all the cities that surround us that really, really do truly benefit from. You know, we talked about the changes that's happening in public safety, and in particular Tempe, you know, Fire Medical Rescue Department. You know, we did a name change not too long ago. So, you know, as a kid growing up, you know, it was Tempe Fire Department. Now it's called Tempe Fire Medical Rescue. And I got to tell you, it's a longer name, but can you explain why the name change came and what does that mean to our department for the men and women that serve it?
Yeah, we started to communicate with the membership of the department, and then eventually I communicated with yourself and the council members, and the city manager shared with you all my thoughts. And obviously a lot of people, I hear quite a bit, well, you guys primarily run medical calls. And though a lot of our training and a lot of what we do at the Fire Academy is suppression-based, it's an extremely dangerous part of our business. The majority of our business, or 80%, not the majority, but a large number of our calls are EMS. So we thought it was time to reevaluate our name and communicate better to the community what the services are that we provide. And shockingly, a lot of the community members did not know that we were the primary caregivers, that we were the ones that provided the emergency medical services and have been for a very long time. And then always the rescue piece of the puzzle. I think when you have a draw like the lake, you have to know that we have the training and we have the equipment and we have the ability to do the things that we do on the lake, which is the rescue part of our business. You have large projects going on in the city right now. We have people that are technical rescue trained employees that are trained to operate on those types of events.
Yeah,
so,
we just had an event, was it last week, we pulled someone out of Tempe Town Lake.
Yes, we did. Our dive team did do a body recovery on Tempe Town Lake last week, and we were able to recover that young man in 11 minutes from the time our crew hit the water, which, though it was a tragedy, it means a lot to that family to know that we were able to provide them with some closure.
So, as you mentioned, you don't just put out fires and you just don't really respond to medical calls. So a lot of what you do is the outreach, the public outreach that you just mentioned, and the prevention work that we do here. And that's one of the things I think, me personally, and I know the city council is really proud of, is the outreach and the proactive use that you guys get into our community to get people engaged to prevent, certain tragedies that could happen. And why is the outreach so important? And also, what types of things do you think our residents need to know when it comes to outreach?
Oh, I think public education and outreach are a big part of what we do. The prevention component, as I say, is one of the key pieces in our mission. Some of my department head friends there would tell you that every meeting we have a fire department proclamation, and that's prevention. Every month we try to identify something that we think is extremely important and communicate to the community some of the preventative efforts that they can put forth themselves. As summer's coming up, drowning. You're going to hear us talk quite a bit about drownings. Through the years, we've done car seats. If there's something that we're seeing, a trend that we're seeing, we believe it's our responsibility to go out and do what we can to eliminate that. One of the things we've recently taken on over the last few years is the changes in CPR. We now see that through CCR, the hands-only CPR, there's science that shows we can make a difference. And through yourself and the council members, we've trained to date, I was just told, over 3,000 high school students, including the other classes that we provide to the community, but it was a campaign.
Yeah.
And so if we weren't doing those things, we'd be responding to even more calls with, I think, negative outcomes.
Well, yeah. Well, it is so important, the public outreach. And right now, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to see some of Tempe's finest. And we're going to talk with the Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department. And we're going to demonstrate the hands-on CPR, which is a lot different than it was when I grew up as a kid. And I think we're going to show that demonstration as we come back right after the break. So thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole.
All right, well, welcome back to our city talk after the break. And we're going to show a demonstration on hands-only CPR. And with us, we have a Deputy Chief, Daryl Duty. Daryl, thank you for coming on to the show. So can you explain to us what we're going to be doing and how I could save one of my colleagues' life? Put it that way.
Sure. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to demonstrate, like you discussed earlier, the CCR, which is the hands-only compressions. There was a lot of scientific study. We're changing the way that we do things in EMS. There were some studies that were done down at the U of A, actually here in Arizona, that started here in our state, which is very cool. They found that the best thing to do is compressions only. We're not going to do mouth-to-mouth anymore, which is great. And one of the big things, if you've ever been certified in CPR before, you know it's a little bit confusing and complicated sometimes. You don't know when to call 911, you don't know when to look, listen, and feel, and breathe, and how many compressions to do, and things like that. So what we try to do is make it very simple. What we want to do is, if somebody's not acting normally, and we think maybe they're having a problem, we want to get down next to them here on our knees.
Okay.
and we want to say, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? We want to shake them, put our hands on them, and say, are you doing okay? If they don't respond, what I want to do is check and see if they're breathing. So I'm going to put my ear down next to their nose and their mouth, and I'm going to listen for air going in and out. And if I don't hear anything, or if I hear just a little bit, I'm going to assume that they're having a cardiac arrest and they're not breathing. So what I want to do is have somebody call 911. Would you dial 911 for me?
Yep, I'll call 911.
All right, we'll
Yes.
get the paramedics coming, and then I'm going to start doing compressions. So what I want to do is find their chest bone here, and you're going to feel, just for the hard part, right between their nipples there. I'm going to put the heel of my hand right there. I'm going to lock my fingers together, straight arms right over the top, and I'm going to go about 100 times a minute at least.
100 times a minute.
100 times a minute, and I'm going to go about 2 inches down. And I'm going to start doing that, and I'm just going to keep doing that until the paramedics get there or somebody else comes to relieve me. And I'm glad you're here because this is a little bit hard to do on a real person. So I'm going to need somebody to spell me here in a second. So
Okay.
if you wouldn't mind, come
All
on
right.
down here, and we're going to do a transfer. And we're going to go on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we've called 911, and as you know, a lot of times people will ask, as we were talking about earlier, why does the fire truck come first? Why didn't I get an ambulance? Well, today we have a fire crew that has been dispatched, and they're going to come in, and we understand this is an extremely stressful scenario, but they're going to come in and they're going to show you how they're going to interact with the community members should they ever have to do this. So we have a crew that has arrived on the scene now, and they're going to take over from you. But continue to do that. Don't stop.
Hi, sir, what's going on?
Oh, my friend, he collapsed, and we're trying to make sure that he wasn't breathing too well, so I just started the compressions.
Okay, you're doing a great job. Eric here's going to take over for you. He's going to count you down to take over. Keep doing what you're doing. You're going to get the monitor on him. Alex, you're grabbing IV. Okay. Can you tell us anything about him? What happened?
Yeah, well, he's currently the vice mayor of the city of Tempe. I think he's 27 years old. He seems pretty healthy and fit. He's been working out a lot lately. I don't know much about his medical history, but he seems pretty healthy.
All right. How many compressions do you think he did?
I think I did probably about 50. Maybe more than that. I needed more than that.
So you can see when the paramedics get here, they're going to take over. If somebody's doing the compressions, there's going to be 4 of us, and they'll come in and they'll just take over for you. You can see they're all very busy. They all have a job. We've got somebody that's putting the cardiac monitor on them, and they're going to look at the heart rhythm and see if they can defibrillate it or not. We've got another member here that took over the compressions for you. We've got somebody working on the airway there. They put an oxygen mask on them. And then we've got somebody down here that's going to start an IV, and they can give some medications that'll hopefully help to get their heart back up.
You know, what's interesting is we talked earlier, or we're going to continue to talk about how important it is that everybody works together as a team. And the fact that you have 4, fire medical rescue team members here on a call, and every single person has a job. I think that's important.
Absolutely, and again, we go. This is just one component of what we do, and though it's an extreme having a patient in cardiac arrest, day in and day out, these men and women are trained to do so many different things, and it is a team concept. It starts back at the academy, that it's a team. Everybody has a role, and for us to be successful, people have to be good, they have to be efficient and effective in their role, and as you see here, everybody's working.
200. Keep doing the compressions. Still existing on the monitor? Still existing. Okay.
So now as they're working them, they're waiting for the ambulance, which will arrive here shortly, and we will then transport to the most appropriate facility or the closest appropriate facility given the scenario.
So speaking of the ambulance, so every time there's a call that's made, when a unit gets dispatched, an ambulance usually follows, correct?
No. We have tiered dispatch,
Okay.
so the ambulance does not get dispatched to all medical calls. We, through looking at our previous years, we've determined what are the chances, what is the percentage of times that we transport that patient. So we try to leave the ambulances available because we have 6 ambulances in the city and we want to be as effective with the ambulance service as we can. So our crews, this would have an automatic dispatch of an ambulance, but there are calls, 50% of our calls do not get an automatic dispatch.
Okay.
The crew gets there, they stabilize, and they determine. Not all calls, what we find in our business, not all calls are the way they were called in. So they'll get there and they'll call for an ambulance. But there are some that just trigger an automatic response of the ambulance.
Well, I think it's really important for those that are here in the audience and those watching on Channel 11, how important it is with all the technologies that we have. And we're very fortunate and blessed to have the training of the men and women of the Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department. So I think this is,
and I think this
really
is
makes me proud to be as a citizen, but not only as a resident of our community, but also as a mayor.
And as you know, here not too long ago, we celebrated the success of one of our students who provided CCR for a family
That's
member.
correct.
And I think the training is extremely important. And again, we have over 600 AEDs that are located throughout the city, automatic external defibrillators. So it's extremely important for community to learn how to not only do CCR, but how to operate those AEDs. And they're really easy to operate, and they make a difference also.
And I just want to reiterate what you just mentioned. It's how important it is for the outreach and to be out in the community. And by our Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department being in our high school district, as you just mentioned, one of those trainees from the students was able to help with a situation under a cardiac arrest or something of this nature. And I think that really speaks volume. All it takes is one person to be trained, and it does save a life. All right, with that, we're going to take a quick break. And I want to thank our Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department for everything that they've done. And so let's give them a round of applause. So thank you, guys.
Oh, hey, Sue. How are you? Oh, good. I just started Keegan's bath, and I'm going to make a quick dinner, and hopefully we'll all get to bed early. How about you? You know what? I should really go check on him. Can I call you back in like 10 or 15 minutes? Okay, thanks. Bye.
Drownings can occur in places other than a swimming pool. Leaving your child unattended near bathtubs, toilets, dog dishes, and even buckets can be deadly. It only takes 2 inches of water in a few seconds for a child to drown. Be diligent. Have constant eye-to-eye supervisions at all times. After all, any distraction can be deadly.
Well, that was great, Chief. Thank you for that demonstration. And I want to thank the Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department for that demonstrations of the hands-on CPR. So thank you very much for that. And, we're going to have a little bit of time for some Q&As. And I did receive a question from the audience. One of the questions is, how many firefighters are EMS?
All.
All of them?
Yes, sir. The minimum they have to have to join the forces, they're EMT, emergency medical technician. And then from there, the next step would be paramedic. So all of the firefighters have a baseline of emergency medical technician. And then we have 2 paramedics on every fire engine. And then recently, Mayor and Council, you have given us then the direction to start to put paramedics on one of our ladder companies. So,
Okay. Well, that's
and
great.
we are in the process of doing that.
Well, thank you so much for this. And this is really, it's kind of inspiring to see what it really does take place when an emergency call comes and we're doing the hands-on CPR. And I know we're going to have some questions from the audience. So at this time, I'd look to Tony Connie. Is there any questions in the audience?
Hi, you said that we have the 26-city system. Is all the training uniform so that no matter where the crew comes from, they're all going to do the same thing, like what we just witnessed? You had several people, which I didn't know that before. Everybody had their own little thing to do. So when someone comes from Mesa, Chandler, Tempe, whatever, is it all the same, or is there little differences?
Yeah, that's a great question. I thought about that when the mayor actually was talking about the Automatic Aid Consortium, and that is a question that we get. What is the difference between Mesa coming in and my Tempe crew that I love? They're so near and dear to my heart. We do. We actually, when we hire our recruits, historically, we have sent them to one of 2 regional academies, and most of the consortium does that. We have really, in the consortium, between all the way from West Valley to the East Valley, we have Mesa, Phoenix, and Glendale has a large facility. And when one of the departments sees the need to run an academy, we then invite other departments to participate. The majority of our recruits have gone through the Phoenix Regional Academy through the years, but we started to use Mesa over the last few years. We have historically, when we've had a need during the downturn in the economy, we had a need. We have done some training at our facility, ran a 12, 14-week academy, but the majority start there. Then, as we go forward in our careers, we send our paramedic students to regional paramedic programs. Technical rescue is regional, hazardous materials is regional, so it's a completely regional system. So you may come on with somebody from Mesa and you'll see them again in paramedic school, or you may see them again on the accident on the 101. And we use one set of policies, operational policies called Volume 2, which is a regional volume. So for things to be changed or placed in Volume 2, there's a committee that is comprised of all of the departments, and we live by that. We call it our Bible, our operations Bible. So yes, you should not see a change when they come into the city.
Great, thank you. Yes, we have another question. Councilmember Shapiro?
Hi, Chief.
Hi.
How healthy is the applicant pool? For example, every position that opens up, could you quantify like the number of applicants you have for each job, or are we struggling to recruit people?
I think you're seeing what we saw was during the downturn of the economy, we saw a lot of our students, and you and I have had these discussions because over at EVIT, you know the pool over there. You have a lot of young men and women that really want to do this for a living. But when the downturn occurred and we were not hiring the numbers that we were used to because the growth, you look at some of the cities around us, how much they're growing, and they were hiring record number of people, or candidates. We've never had record number of candidates. It's been a very long time, but a lot of these cities, I don't want to say it was easy, but there was definitely a very good market out there. Then the downturn happened and people had to look at other options because it's already a difficult job to get. We know that. Do I think we're seeing, are we having problems recruiting? No. We can get 2,000, 3,000 applicants even in the worst economy. But some of the things we've done is we've teamed up with, during the downturn again, we tried to be as fiscally responsible as we could, and we did what was called the Tri-City. We're coming into our third year. We partnered with Chandler and Scottsdale, and how much does that play into that 3,000 number? What would it be if we were doing it individually? I don't know. It's been a while since we've done it, but I also think I don't know if I'd want to do that, sir, because it's such a benefit to the candidate. They have to test one time, fly here, change their schedule for 3 departments. So it's a great opportunity. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. I really haven't seen the numbers decrease. We still have people that'll stay 24 hours up all night long to get an application.
Thank you. We have another question. Yes, Darlene.
If there were only 2 people, you and the survivor or potential survivor, at what point do you call 911?
Call 911 immediately, then start compressions.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Get those folks coming as fast as you can. Get the rescuers.
We have another question.
How do we get CPR training at my daughter's school?
Chief Duty, where are you at?
We go into all of the high school health classes every semester. So if your son or daughter is going to be taking a health class, then they will get the training. Absolutely. Yeah.
Great.
I certainly could take a shot to tell you to go online, but then they'll yell at me because they would have had a more defined, and I'd rather you get that answer.
Councilmember Kiwi.
Chief, how do you handle repeat clients who maybe lack access to basic health care? How do you bring them into the healthcare system after the first or second or third visit?
You know, that is a great question, and that is one of the pieces of the name change. We realized that if we were going to continue to provide the services that we feel are necessary, we had to identify ourselves as not only the medical providers, but when we went to charter and brought it before yourself and your council colleagues, we also identified ourselves as playing a role in the community health piece of this, because we were doing a pilot with the PAS, the Patient Advocate Services, with ourselves in Tempe St. Luke's. And what that is a program that recently has been, an article is in one of the trade journals, Fire Engineering. We did an article on it. We think it's an extremely successful program. What that does is that engages that person that continues to utilize 911 as a service. And We've found some great success with that. Again, we'll be providing you with the article, and I don't have a problem. We'll probably put the article linked on our website, but the article really goes into not only the number of times that some of the users have called 911, but some of the just really simple things that we've been able to provide as a solution to that cyclical issue. And when we get them in touch with the right people, not only is it good for them, but it also takes away the burden on the 911 system. So that is what we're doing right now, and we're continuing to move forward with that program. Mayor, council have been extremely supportive in that program, and you've seen the benefits of it. Tempe St. Luke's has been a great partner. They've seen the benefits, and they've made a commitment to providing us with a nurse whenever we want to go out and do the work. So those are the types of things we're doing, and we have some other things as we move forward that I've communicated with you all that we're looking at to ensure that we're providing the right services out there.
Great.
But the changes in the healthcare system are causing us to look at the way we do business, provide service.
I think we have one more question. Yes.
How can Tempe residents who are interested in being a part of a Tempe Fire Medical Rescue get involved?
Get involved in what capacity?
Like if they actually want to become a firefighter, how would they go about doing that?
On our website, there's some information about not only recruitment and when we're testing, but we also have what we started a few years ago, a cadet program. And that was a way to engage the community members early on and expose them to what we do. It's been an extremely successful program. We've lost a number of our cadets to fire departments around the state. So it's already getting the reputation as being a very, very good program. And you may see them running around at events in gray shirts that have Tempe Fire Medical Rescue. The gray-shirted people, or men and women in the gray shirts, are our cadet program. That is one of our, I think right now, one of our greatest tools for recruitment. We also do a lot of recruitment at ASU and you name it. And we're starting to recruit again now that we have a test coming up later this year. So for the viewers at home, watch for the announcement of the testing opportunity for the Tri-City later this year.
Well, Chief, Tempe is changing dramatically, as we talked about earlier. But, since 2012, we've added over 15,000 jobs. We've crossed over the $1 billion mark in terms of capital investment for our community. We've added 4.7 million square feet of office space in our city. This is great news, obviously. But with that great news does come some challenges for us, especially when it comes to public safety. And, we have some pretty tall buildings now. Could you talk, what does this mean to you and your department with all the growth that we've experienced with the influx of people? We're a thoroughfare when it comes to, traffic. Our population doubles on a daily basis just because of the type of industry and the jobs we have here. So how does this really affect the Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department?
Well, I think first and foremost, it affects our call volume and then our ability to respond in a timely fashion. When you start to add the congestion, we know it's going to impact our ability to get there, and that's why through the years we've done some things with the light preemption. People get really upset when the fire truck gets the green light. It's kind of important for the fire truck to get the green light, so I understand the disruption. All the way to, recently did a station location study, and I had asked yourself and the council to move forward with a station study just so we had another view of the city and the growth, and if indeed some of that stuff comes to fruition, how are we going to respond to that? Question is always how are we handling the high rise, mid to high rise? It is a different dynamic for us, though we have had mid to high rise buildings for a very long time on the campus of ASU and the bank building down south on Baseline. In Volume 2, our policy manual, our folks back in the Fire Academy learn how to respond and deploy on high-rise buildings. So it's not a new concept. They learn all the way back at the academy. It's just they leave the academy and they may go to a city that doesn't have high-rise or mid-rise buildings. So they learn how to operate on that. Doesn't mean that as we continue to build those buildings that it's not a concern for me that we continue to train. That becomes a priority now that you have those buildings in your backyard and you're gonna have to respond to them. And that starts from the minute they put the shovel in the dirt. We build a relationship with those agencies, and we ask to come in there throughout the various phases of development and start to practice honing our skills at that time, because you look at State Farm, such a large workforce. We knew the potential was there, and so did State Farm. They bought a basket specifically designed for our people to utilize should we have to go to upper floors when we don't have elevators and have the mechanisms to get people down. For us to get to those upper floors, crane operators have been paid to work with us on overtime basis, and we recently just used it on the site just west of there. They let us use that. But that training starts the minute the shovel hits the ground.
It doesn't just stop there, though, with the training. I mean, from a city perspective, we also work with our development services department regarding our codes, and with the big buildings, we just recently worked with the air compression system that we require to be in taller buildings. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, since David Nakagora got here, I sat down with him and I asked him, what's the future look like? And he told me there's growth, and we've had a lot of discussion, continue to have discussions with those folks about what's coming and how we should prepare. And one of the ways we prepared some time ago was through our codes. We put air systems in the building for our firefighters to replenish their airs. They don't have to carry up as many bottles, and they don't have to come down. They could replenish the air, their breathing air, on various floors throughout the building. And you were there when we actually had the generous donation from Rescue Air at our training site. They put a system in our training site so we could train with it. Once again, I go back to they can continue to build the buildings. We have to train and stay on top of the need for that type of rescue or that type of emergency.
You mentioned earlier about the fire station location study. What did that study find? What were the results of that? And can you explain to the audience, those that are watching, what does that mean for us?
I think one of the things that we're working on right now, and one of the things we'll have to go forward with, is trying to figure out where we're going to put a station, first and foremost, in the southeast quadrant of the city. And then from there, if we continue to grow and develop at the rate we are, we'll probably find ourselves having to put another resource up at the northeast portion of the city. And that's what the study revealed, is that down south, a third of our city, we have the one station, Station 4 down there, but we do have partners around our perimeter, but we do need to address that southeast quadrant of the city, or the southern part of the city. So that's one of the things that I obviously have on your direction, Mayor, Council, and working with the city manager to go forward and try to find that location and have something set up for the next 5 years. We're a busy department. I remind people, in the fire service, when I tell them the numbers we're running, as you said, almost 23,000 calls out of 6 fire stations. We're a very, very busy department, but we can stay ahead of this. We know we're going to continue to go up. The study did show that we're going to continue to go up in our call volume, but I think we're being proactive and we're going to stay ahead of it.
You mentioned, the 23,000 calls. I mean, we're only a 42 square mile size city, and that's a lot of calls within a year. We covered a lot of topics, and I really want to thank you. And I had to mention, I know this might date me a little bit, but when we were asking about what made you become a firefighter, when I was a kid, we were watching, today you have Chicago Fire and all these other TV shows, and there's so much more that goes into being involved with the Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department. As a kid, I remember Emergency 51, What Adams 12. I mean, when I was a kid, those are the shows that really, got kids interested in going in that profession. But as you're saying, it's a calling. It really is a calling. And I want to thank you, Chief, personally, for being here on the first show for City Talk.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to thank the Tempe Fire, the men and women of the Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department, and the demonstration we had here today, and Assistant Chief Darrell Duty, Deputy Chief Darrell Duty, for being here as well, and everyone. So thank you so much for joining us at City Talk, and we'll see you at the next City Talk. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you very much for having me.